Hi, and welcome to our webinar on Jim2 documents. A common thing that I hear when I talk to customers is that they don't know what they don't know. And as such, we'll cover each topic from the basics to advanced usage to make sure that you're all fully informed of each section. I also wanted to let you know that these webinars and other short informational videos are available in our Learning Centre. You can find this on our website by going to jim2.com.au, highlighting resources, and then clicking the Learning Centre. Finally, before we get started, I wanted to thank everyone that filled out the survey ahead of this webinar. It was great to see what our customer base wanted to know more about in regards to documents. Now, I'd like to introduce Ian, our Head of Customer Services, who is our authority on all things Jim2. Hi Ian, welcome.
Yes, my apologies for my voice. The dreaded lurgy, so I'll try not to spread it through the team session here.
It is absolutely going around at the moment, isn't it, Ian? It's a heck of a shame.
It is.
Okay, well, today I wanted to take a look at how Jim2 can be used as a document repository. I think there's a lot of features in relation to documentation within Jim2 that people may not know about and could really help out in a lot of use cases. So let's start by first talking about the types of documents we think might make the most impact by having available in Jim2. Ian?
Yeah, Ash, I think when we talk about documents, we want things that people can get their hands on that are sometimes they're going to be images, sometimes they're going to be signed documentation, such as delivery notes. You're going to have different types of safety or risk assessment type forms, all different things that you can store and get access to from Jim2, from jobs, purchases, whatever.
I think you mentioned images in amongst all that. Forgive me if I didn't, but that's what the script says. So does that mean that Jim2 is capable of storing any file types and have them associated with Jim2 objects? Could we store videos, for example?
Yeah, well, let's just clarify that term objects for a sec. We're talking about the areas of Jim that we all know. So when we say objects, we're talking about jobs, projects, assets. So it's about being able to say I have a file, which can be certainly be an image, and we'll talk some examples of that, and how those images can be attached to jobs, for example. So if I'm in a service type job, I can take a photo and I can store it and I can see the work that I'm doing on a repair, for example, or a service of a product. Now, there are limitations to these sizes. So you have a setting in your tools and options in Jim to talk about the sizes that images are allowed to be, or any documents allowed to be. And you just need to make sure that suits your circumstances, whether you have an on-premises server type license or whether you have a cloud license. Once you set those options, they're going to be fairly similar to what you can do with attachments in email for something like Outlook.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, let's take a look at the document system and see how it works. Probably the easiest way to dive in is to go to Documents and then create a document list. As we can see, there's a list of folders on the left-hand side, and these are technically groups that are set up to create a folder structure for the documents. I've prepared a few here that might give some inspiration on what you can store for your business. There are a number of ways to add documents to the library. The first is to simply click the Add button in the bottom left of the window. And this will allow you to add one document at a time to Jim2. I will point out that there is a security tab at this point, but we will come back to this in a little bit. To select the file that you'd like to upload, we can click the three dots or ellipses that's at the end of the file field. The Explorer will pop up. For cloud users, getting to your local terminal can be a little bit tricky, but don't worry, I'll show you a much easier way that works for both cloud and on-prem in a little bit. After we select a file and click open, it will use that file name as the name of the document for in Jim2, but you can change that to be anything you like, as long as it suits your referencing. There is a URL field that can be used if the document is available from a URL, and yes, this does work with OneDrive and SharePoint documents, but only if you have Microsoft 365 configured to allow access to Jim2. If you are curious about that, we do have a great article on Jim2 Help that shows all the steps that's needed to set that up. Next, we can choose the folder or group to store the document in. We can either do that with the arrow next to the folders, or we can select the tree at the right-hand side to move the groups over as we see fit. And there are a few entries in the drop-down for usage. What are these generally for?
Yeah, well, we can use them for different applications of the document. For example, product images that you want to display in your Jim2 commerce websites, you can use, excuse me, you can use the usage section to deal with that. We'll talk to clients about what usage tags are applicable in those circumstances. You also have the opportunity to simply leave it blank, and what that's simply going to do is that there's no specific usage for the particular document. It's simply something that's sitting in the system and that you can access at any time.
Fantastic. We also have categories and tags that can further categorize the documents. Ian, what are some main use cases around these?
Yeah, I think when we look at where you're going to put documents, one of the great ways to think about it is to consider a general office environment where you have filing cabinets and you have places to go to find the documents that you're after. Ash, a little earlier, you spoke about the folder structure there, which is what you might call a hierarchical or nested type of look, very similar to Windows Explorer. And in here, you're able to file these documents away. When we start talking about category, at that point, we're saying what category is the actual document. Now, categories, each document can only have one category. So what this requires is for the companies running Jim2 to make a decision as to what category actually means to them. You can't have somebody in your company who uses Jim thinking category is for this purpose, when in fact the rest of the company uses it for another. Indeed, you don't need to use category if you don't wish to. The one that I really like here is tag. Tags are the equivalent of what you may know as non-report level groups in other areas of Jim2. And here, tags can be very useful if you would like to quickly get access to documents that you commonly use. So for example, in our database here at Happen, there's a tag there for Ian, and all the documents that I typically like to have at my fingertips, whether I be on site with a client or I'm sitting in the office, I just tag them as Ian. And that way I can just bring up every document that's related to me in that way. Now, of course, one document can have many tags. So it can be something that you can share around and people can use for different purposes.
Very good. And of course, tags being something we can apply multiple of to one object, which is distinct from category being only one-to-one.
That's right. That's right. So a lot harder to use category than it is in terms of a company environment than it is in terms of tags, which really does suit a lot of people at once.
Fantastic. And next we've got a hidden checkbox. What does this do?
Sure. So when we talk about hidden documents, we're saying these documents are typically documents associated with a very specific thing in Jim. For example, imagine a tax invoice which is saved as a document against a particular job. It's not a sort of document that you're going to go and look for on a regular basis. It's got a very specific meaning, as in, I'm an invoice, I'm for that job. The likelihood is you're only going to look up that invoice when you look up that job. So when very specific documents are linked in Jim, you'll find some of them are what's called hidden. And what that displays as is a sort of a grey font. If you looked at a list of documents, which we'll see shortly, you'll see some of them sort of have a grey font indicating they're not something that's very public or very open to be used by the rest of the company. But let's contrast that with something that isn't hidden. Think of a leave form. annual leave, you want to fill it in. Maybe you need to go look in your documents to find a copy, open it up and fill it in. Training documents that you might store, how to do things within your organization, risk management forms that you need to get your hands on regularly. Now, those sort of documents wouldn't be considered to be hidden. They're not specific to one job or one purchase. They're things that you want to get to on a regular basis, print out, email, and utilize. Now, once you say something is hidden or unhidden, that's also really helpful when you run a list of documents, because you can say, I'm only looking for the things that aren't hidden, for example, and that'll give you a display of those same types of forms I discussed: leave approval, training document, etc.
Sort of creates a separation between a specific use document for an individual job or other object and a more general use document that multiple people can get their hands on.
Well, that's correct. The other sort of byproduct of this is over time, you're going to store a lot of documents in Jim. And ultimately, you're not going to need to have every single document come up on screen when you're looking for something. So it's a really great way of saying, I'm only looking for things that aren't hidden. And that will limit the amount of documents that'll come up for you to select from.
Excellent. So next is the email as a link checkbox. Now, this will allow the document to be accessed via a link as opposed to storing the file on an email directly. To use this, the document must be available via a URL that's stored against the document in Jim2. But we also have to make sure that that URL is available for customers to access as well. And finally, we have the description box, which will allow you to augment the title with a little blurb describing what the document may be for. So after we've added a document, I'll just cancel this one. There are a couple more things that we can check out. First of all is how we find documents. If we click the tab labeled search at the bottom of the window, we can then find a header with all the fields from when adding a document. I usually just type in what I'm looking for in the name and then click run or press enter. This will depend on your document naming convention though. Next, when selecting a document that's stored in the database, you get a preview of the document in the preview pane, which is pretty handy for checking out the contents of a document really quickly. We would like to bring this preview functionality to documents linked from OneDrive and SharePoint also, but for the moment, it's only available with locally stored documents. Going into a document, Ian, I can see a version pane at the bottom of the screen. Does this mean that Jim2 is storing different versions of the same document? And how does that work?
Yes, when you're bringing the documents across into Jim2, you're commonly going to update documents, for example. So you'll have a version from last year which needs to be reviewed and redone this year. And so those version controls allow us to see different versions and their dates and actually access those versions and know what version we had used in a given circumstance. For example, I sent a form out to a customer. I'd like to know which version of that form the customer received. So version control can be a handy way for you to keep on top of things. And it ties in very nicely with what we call check in and check out, which are features that you'll see at the top of the screen on the ribbon. Now,
Currently have this document checked out. I was doing some testing quickly before the webinar, my apologies.
So whilst Ash is taking some housekeeping steps there, what we're talking about with checkout and check-in, checking out allows us to tell the world who uses Jim2 that we have a document outside that we're currently working on. So if you think about a Word document that's about safety information, somebody will check it out so they can modify that document. And anybody in the company who's looking to use that document at that time will see that it's actually checked out. Now, that doesn't stop someone using the version that was checked out in the first place. That can still be seen and utilized, but it's an advice that somebody is modifying it. The benefit of the checkout check-in system, apart from advising you, is also that when you check it back in again, Jim's able to associate it as simply a different version of that document. So it'll update the version numbers. Now, being able to use check-in and check-out can be very quick, as in, when you check out, you can check it out to a folder that you can get to locally, open the file, do the work, and just immediately check it back in again. It will utilize local folders in order to locate the file somewhere so you can work on it. You can use comments. Comments are available to you. If you don't want to use comments, you don't need to. They're not compulsory.
Okay, so that means that Jim2 has full version control of all documents that it stores locally. Is there some ability for Jim2 to store older versions of files as well? Actually, we just sort of covered that off, didn't we, with all the playing around I was doing there.
Lovely,
fantastic. Yeah, thank you. It's an original. So how does this come together, Ian? How can we use all of this to help our businesses?
Well, again, I think it's about the access. People will use documents in Jim2 so they can get from something in Jim across to that document, see the relevance and how it applies. And given that you can link one document to many things, it means you only sometimes need one document, yet you might link that to 100 different areas of Jim2, 100 jobs, for example. So it's a great way for you to get an association between something that isn't about Jim, a file or a photo, and have it associated with so many different areas of Jim2, and everybody's seeing the same information.
I've just pulled a job up here, and we can see that we've got a number of documents. I think it's worth pointing out that some objects within Jim will automatically link documents from other objects. Now, there is a table that describes this in Jim2 Help to tell you exactly which objects will draw from which others, but we can see here that some documents that I've got on the card file Blunky Mac, there he is automatically attached to this job because it's for Blunky Mac. Because they have the project labor grouping, then we've got documents related to labor grouping. And even the item DSC has documents moving to it automatically linking from the item DSC. This can be a great way to have documents automatically link and automatically move through Jim, so long as we know what those linking properties are. Ian, can you speak to that at all?
Yes, well, I think the thing that people once they get a grasp of this and they understand that a document in Jim is a little bit like a piece of stock or a card file. It's an object that just exists in Jim2 that you can then continue the links to other things. So some of those links are done manually. The user chooses to link an image to a job, or they can be done through the simple inheriting that you're talking about here, which is where I have an associated area in a job and anything associated with the project or item is just going to pass across. Now, again, this means thinking about where you want a document to link to in the first place. Is it more associated or more relevant to be associated with the project, or is it more relevant to be associated with a card file? They're just things to consider. Maybe they should be linked directly to both.
Fantastic. Now, we can see that the document storage in Jim2 is quite extensive and powerful, but surely there will be times in which a document is not wanted or needed to be seen by all staff. So what security options do we have to help maintain appropriate visibility of different documents?
Well, firstly, just an overall thing that I'd like to bring up here, and that is that Jim2 is about visibility. So the expectation is the reason you keep something in Jim is so people can see it, not so they can't. So I want people to be really aware of that before they start thinking about what they would throw into Jim2 as a document. When we talk about the security areas of Jim2, you can see here as Ashley has the screen up, we're talking in the document section of security about viewing and editing, and I think everyone can understand what those particular settings mean. In relation to steal locks. Stealing the locks actually refers to a circumstance where somebody has checked out a document and then other people are saying, well, that's been checked out for too long. I need to essentially cancel the checkout. And so stealing a lock is really about stealing somebody else's checkout. Now, these are rare circumstances, but think about a circumstance where, for example, someone checked out a document that's quite important and then went on leave for 4 weeks. And we need that back in play and handled. So somebody with this authority, this security, would be able to steal that lock, and essentially they're cancelling the checkout. Now, the same thing could apply when a user leaves a business. If they have checked out documents, again, someone should go in and steal those locks and bring them back. The anonymous OneDrive links, of course, allows you to be able to access a document even though you don't have a login to the OneDrive where it is stored. So that's another feature to consider in 4.5 as to where you're going to put these documents, if any are going to be stored on a OneDrive.
Is the OneDrive and SharePoint integration exclusive to, I think it's 4.4 and 4.5, or became available from 4.4?
Yes, and then modified again in 4.5. So we are talking about the current versions of Jim2 that are holding that.
Fantastic. So jumping back over to individual document security, we can pop into the tab at the bottom of a viewing document and then start to actually provide individual document security as well.
And this is, I'm sure, time consuming if you have to go back to a whole lot of them and deal with it. Much easier if you're just dealing with these documents one at a time and working your way through. They're quite simple to utilize, these security settings. When we talk about the right-hand side of the grid here, and we can see columns of view, edit, and delete, I think they all make sense. What we're then saying is who are the people and where do they come from who are allowed to make these choices. Now, those choices of who are coming from the left-hand side of the screen, where we're talking about either individual users and what applies to them, or security group members and what applies to them. So if we had the technicians, for example, and there were 4 technicians and we chose technician as the feature, then we're saying anyone who belongs to that group is going to be able to do the things that are ticked. If we specify Mark in particular, or Greg, and I'm following you, Ash.
Sorry.
If we specify one person in particular, then that person is going to be the one who can do the things that are ticked. And of course, the opposite, not ticked, can't do.
Fantastic. And this would work as a hierarchy. So for example, managers would be able to view, so Fred would be able to view but not edit and delete, although because Greg is specified as being able to edit, even though he's in the management group, he would be able to edit that document.
Yes, quite correct. And this is quite similar to other areas of Jim2, such as email security for folders, etc.
Right. Looking at the tabs in the bottom, the links tab is going to show you all the objects that the document is attached to. And as with most areas of Jim, you can also add notes, tasks, and labor to individual documents as well, which can be handy when scheduling revisions or tracking the time that you've spent on them. If a customer sends in an email with a document attached, how can we easily add that to Jim2? I'll just get up job 294. I think I've used this one as an example in previous webinars, but that's absolutely okay. We should be able to see the email on the right-hand side in the preview pane with the attachment. We can simply just drag that over into the comment section to add that as a document, which can be a real time saver in a lot of different scenarios.
And Ash,
sorry, Ian, go ahead.
If you just hold that there for a second, you can see the defaults are coming into play here, such as you've been on a job with an email with a document attached, you're dragging it onto a job, and immediately it marks it as hidden. Again, this is because it's a very specific document relating to that job. You could remove that tick and it wouldn't be hidden. So that's just the default starting to play as you drag things around.
We also have the ability, I mean, it also defaults to linking to the job when adding a document in this way. And we have the ability to link to the file only, that is, don't upload it to the database, although of course this only works with a URL. Security is also accessed from a tab on here too. Okay, so how about from the Jim2 mobile app? A little bit trickier to demo today, but Ian, can you talk us through that process?
Yeah, I think there are two things from the mobile app that's worthwhile considering, particularly for the businesses who are doing service and repair work, and even taking receipts of goods at a dock, for example. The mobile app will allow you to take photos off your phone or your iPad and link it directly to a job or a piece of stock or a purchase order in Jim2. So being able to do that makes things very easy for you rather than having to potentially take a photo, store them in some app, and then pass them across later. The delivery notes that are signable in particular are very useful because, of course, once you have a delivery sent to a customer, the person delivering, if they're using Jim, and of course we would assume it's a user of Jim from your company, they would open it up on the Jim2 mobile app. They'd be able to bring up the particular documents, have it signed off, and that signature will pass back onto the Jim2 excuse me, the Jim2 program. So when I'm looking at a job, I'll immediately see the customer has signed for the goods. Now, they're nice little interactions. We're continually reviewing how those interactions work. We're taking more advantage of applications that run on mobile devices and how they can do more integration with Jim. But the photos is a clear, simple example of taking something that the phone can already do and then applying it back into the Jim2 area. Storing it as a document, well, it's going to be a document specific to the job, therefore it's going to be hidden. It will hide itself in a sense, and that is, I think this is a great shot, Ash, you're showing, of the different colors of the fonts. The grey fonts indicating the more hidden, the actual files that are hidden, whereas the black fonts are the unhidden documents.
Fantastic. So Ian, let's say you'd like to start using Jim2 to start storing documents. What are some helpful hints that we can provide around that?
Well, firstly, it's easy to do. So being able to do it simply by dragging off an email into a job or a purchase order or whatever, fantastic to utilize. But I do think that some thought should go into building folder structures. So in the way in which we saw Jim was able to use folders to indicate where a document's being stored, when we had that sort of Windows Explorer kind of look and feel, I think it's worthwhile discussing that as a company and working out the structure. This is simply for neatness. It's not going to change the storage capacity of your documents or necessarily the accessibility. It's just a way of pigeonholing or putting aside these files into a space that matters. Excuse me. I think the other thing to consider, as I mentioned earlier, just briefly, the categories. Is there a way to categorize documents so that you can also use that as a filter tool? Remembering that you can bring documents into Jim in a number of ways. We saw the drag off the email, but equally you can use effectively a copy and paste, which means that you could see a file that's sitting on your computer and you'd be able to copy it from the clipboard into the system, either against a job or just straight into documents, meaning it's not associated with any jobs or purchases, etc. It's simply a document you want. Now, there are ways we can bring multiples in. Ash is displaying that at the moment. So you're able to actually select a range of images or other types of documents, copy them, and then drop them in.
This button at the top is the one that is key to doing that. So all I've done there is selected a number of documents, press copy, and then push that button. And it will actually, for cloud and on-prem customers, will take the documents from your clipboard, from your copy, and allow you to bring them in. Important to note that you can actually set each of these documents with individual settings, or we can select all to set as one set of settings for all documents as well. Sorry, Ian, jumped in there.
And the more that people can understand the different ways in which they can get things in here, then the easier it's going to be. I really do think also the other thing to consider here is don't duplicate documents if you don't need to. So the same document, in theory, you could store the same document twice. I don't mean as a version control, I mean as two individual names. And that's just a thinking process about how do we bring things in, and do we have sort of a consideration for that. Every time you bring a document in, you are increasing storage space. And of course, some of those documents are nothing, others are quite large. So you might want to have some consideration for that. If you're dealing with Jim2 Cloud, then your database size will grow, and we don't have restrictions in terms of that size that database can become. So that's a handy way to keep as many things as you really need associated as documents in Jim.
And if we do, that should have actually recognized that that was a duplicate document. There's a warning that pops up letting you know. I think we saw it earlier in the webinar that lets us know, hey, this is a duplicate document. How would you like to store this? So there is a bit of IntelliSense in there that that is able to pick these things up. Okay, so that should be most of the essentials around documentation. Before we go to the Q&A, we do have a question in from our pre-webinar survey. Ian, is there an easy way to attach the same document to a job and a machine? And what's the easiest way to achieve that?
Well, I think this is coming back to versions of Jim now. When we talk about version 4.3, we didn't include assets in that. In version 4.4 and 4.5, we do have assets. So it's a question of whether we're talking about the machine as a project in 4.3 or as an asset in 4.5. The linking that we saw earlier is very handy to allow you to be able to see in a job, for example, things that are linked from projects. They aren't, though, linked from assets. So what you can do when you're dealing with a machine record, let's say it's a job and you're dealing with servicing that, is you do have hyperlinks within the screen to go look at the asset, or to go look at the machine, or go look at the project. So here I'm not talking about the associated documents. I'm talking about just popping into the various areas that we can see there that Ashley's highlighting, and from there you can check those documents. Now, if at that point you can see a document that isn't associated with the job and you would like it to, then again, you can take the next step and you can pop into that document and associate it with the job if that's what you need. But keep in mind, Jim is about navigation. It's about being able to move to different areas. And so navigating your way to the machine record would be a pretty easy way to see an image that's associated with that.
Fantastic. Sorry, I didn't quite have an example there, but I think we get the idea. So let's open up the Q&A. Is there any questions that have come in while we've been yakking away? And if not, is there any questions that anyone would like to ask around documentation? No questions in as yet, but we will give that a couple of minutes. Ian, is there any sort of aspects around documentation that we haven't really touched on today that is worth talking about?
Well, I think it's relatively simple, to be frank. I think that the content of today's session is covering most of the applications for the products. Maybe just a consideration that it is electronic files. So whilst we tend to talk about it in terms of PDFs and images, equally it can be storage of executables and other things depending on your security controls. So it's an electronic file that you're storing, and being able to get to it from Jim2 can be pretty handy. Remember too, though, that if you are storing an electronic file that uses an application that is not something Jim recognizes, you won't be able to open it within Jim. So think about file types that aren't images, that aren't PDFs, which Jim can quite easily manage. And you're going to have a third-party application that can actually open that file.
Excellent. So we've got a couple of questions in. One from Dallas, can you show a document that has OneDrive integration so we can see how that works? Unfortunately, I don't have my demo system set up with a OneDrive integration, as it is quite a big integration, so I'm not able to demo that. That being said, we can get in touch, or you can get in touch with support to learn more about that. As I mentioned earlier, there is a great article in Jim2 Help. What it effectively looks like, though, is instead of having a file listed here, there's a URL. And then that URL is drawing from a OneDrive or a SharePoint, and is simply being accessed from that location.
And maybe to help Dallas a little with that that question, when you are saying that you want to deal with saving a file and attaching it, linking it in Jim2, once you turn on OneDrive integration, Jim will actually open an authentication for you to save in your OneDrive account. So it'll actually activate the OneDrive logins so that you can then say, great, where am I going to put this document and store it? And it'll bring up the OneDrive file structure. Now, it doesn't stop you also saving it outside of a OneDrive structure. You don't have to. So turning it on, you'll get a slightly different screen come up at the point where you're saying you wish to save this document, and then as a Jim2 linked doc.
Great points. Vivian asks, if the document is hidden and I attach it to a purchase order, does that mean other people won't be able to see it if they open up that purchase order?
Look, I so like the question, because hidden doesn't mean hidden, and that's an interesting concept in the way it works. It really is just a filtering tool. So no, people, if they have the security to see the document, they'll be able to see it regardless of whether it's hidden.
So just as a demonstration, Vivian, I'm just ticking the hidden box. So I want to only see documents that are hidden, and we can see the light gray entries in this list. Whereas if I remove that requirement, say I only want to see documents that are not hidden, we'll see the ones that are in the black text. When we see both of them, this is really what the hidden is about, is being able to search for the documents. Again, so hidden is more about a document directly associated with an individual object, usually a job, purchase order, things like that. Whereas the unhidden is more about general accessibility. Next up from Renee, when you create a similar job for the different customers, does it carry over the document to save it in a new job? So when we do a create similar, we actually have the option to tick documents, which will then carry them over to the new job. I don't think there's a way to set this by default. You would need to remember to tick it, but yeah, you do have that ability. Renee also asks, is there a limit to how many document folders you can have? No, you can, I think you can create as many as you like. There may be a high limitation, Ian.
Well, just to clarify, it's an interesting question. You can have as many folders as you like, but it's the actual folder structure is the same as report level groups in other areas of Jim2, such as stock. That is, you have 5 levels. Okay, so as far as the number of folders, have what you wish, but when you wish to drill down, you're going to be able to come down 5 levels, not 6. So in the example that we have there at the moment, Ash is just adding a 3rd level and a 4th level, excuse me, and then we will run out. So we'll get the 5th in, at which point?
It's as far as you can go.
Gone. Now, if you think of the similarities to Windows Explorer allows the hierarchy to continue to grow. So that's the difference there in how that works.
Michelle, can you please demonstrate attaching a document to a job, example, a delivery document, and how it can be signed by a customer? I'm not really able to demonstrate that because that would be, well, at least the signable documents are available on mobile. So either mobile phone or iPad, something like that. In the mobile, there's a section for documents when on a job that you can access a signable document, have the customer sign it, and it will auto apply to that job. Unfortunately, it's not easy to demonstrate because it would be from a phone, which I'd need to replicate on the screen. And I'm not quite set up for that today. But again, if that's something you're interested in, reach out. We'll get something in front of you. David, how do you add a product disclosure statement for a product with a code for a stock series, e.g. glasses, but a separate code for the style to attach it to each stock code without saving the document multiple times? Would items be the answer there, Ian?
Well, maybe there's questions then about how the database is structured to deal with these differences. Again, this is probably more specific to the sites that are dealing with it. Product disclosure statements, just as a document, absolutely. Essentially, you can excuse me, either attach that one document against multiples or multiple stock, or you could do it against an item if an item is being used in order to drive stock into a job. It could also potentially be associated with the customer, depending on whether the product disclosure is relevant to them too. But again, with David, if you'd like to make contact, we can take you through, look at what the circumstances are and work out the best method to help you with that.
Maybe some specific requirements that we won't be able to capture in the webinar.
Yeah.
Brendan, is there a way of automating attaching documents to an email that are attached to a job? I don't think so. So there are ways to automate attaching documents to an email, and that is through the use of email templates, but that would not necessarily be a way to pick up ones that are attached specifically to a job. Is that right, Ian?
Absolutely, that's correct. So email templates, very powerful tool, allowing you to set up email formats and have an association with specific documents built into those, and that can all occur. But in terms of looking at the job and then picking the documents from it, that would be a scripting requirement. We'd need to talk to you about what suits your circumstances there.
Sorry, Ian, how do we attach a document in here again?
Yeah, sure. So just back into your home. Just excuse me while I cough.
Please. Oh, sorry, right over here, attach file and select document. I found it while you were coughing. So in this example, we've got a fact sheet about emails. We can then go and set up the template to be about emails in whichever way, give it a name and a subject, and then that document will be sent every time this template is used. Although I think you do have the option to delete it at the point of creation, so just be aware of that.
That circumstance also suits our customers who are dealing with trade debtors who are doing chase-ups and have documents stored in Jim, which could be information regarding the customer's repayment terms and the requirements for them to pay. So it's handy to have email templates working with documents, definitely.
I think that's all the questions at the moment. Unless there's any last minute ones want to jump in. Give that a minute or so. Yeah, I completely missed adding into this prepared notes, or the script as we call it, about adding documents to templates. That can be a very useful thing for a lot of customers.
Oh, absolutely. And look, one of the things that does come up there, when you were adding that template, adding the document to the template, we also saw that it was asking if you wanted to select from file, attach from file. Now, here's actually probably a great example of why documents is great to use. Attach from file means the likelihood is nobody else can see this document, and therefore it's not something shared between the team. It's not something that the rest of your users can get to. Whereas select a document, we know it's linked into Jim2. So the more things you can put into Jim and therefore build into the email templates, the more you're sharing this information. We use this all the time, by the way, with our documents. And you're not having something selectively stored on your own computer that isn't a document. So attached files should become less of the requirement when you're building email templates, and select document should become more of the tool that you use.
So Renee's just asked back on the email template, so that's how you can attach a specific document. So for example, current promotions.
It's a
Absolutely.
great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So we could simply create the template to say, you know, March Madness, Christmas sale, whatever it might be. And then either, so I think the distinction between select and attach is select is what's already in Jim and you can choose from the documents available, and attach is what's on your terminal. And so then you can go pick a document from your location and have that attached to the template.
And Renee, your suggestion's great, because we talk about getting towards Christmas, or I know Christmas doesn't mean the same thing to everybody in terms of retail opportunity, but when you're sending November statements out, for example, you could attach these things to the November statement email template that you may have. So not only does it carry a statement, but it can also carry a bit of a news bulletin about Christmas close downs or other information you want to pass across. So it's a good application. Well done.
She's also just asked another one. Can you email individually or a group? So this would be about how we're setting up an email template. So the email template can then be used to email individually and well, we would refer to it as lists of customers, whether that be lists of jobs, lists of projects, lists of card files. There's options in the report section. I might just quickly do that from job test list. Of course, it's got none in there. And we can say email from job list. There's a very similar report available from most objects in Jim2 that you can actually email every card file in that in the list of whatever you've created. And then you
also,
can,
as we said, trade debtors is a pretty common place that you're going to be coming from when you go to accounts. Excuse me, debtors, and you have a debtors list.
First thing you select in there is the email template. Can you add a different version of a PDF document that's been edited outside of Jim? Yeah, so long as you've checked out the PDF document, had it edited, and then checked back in, it will be associated with that record in Jim, and you'll see the different versions within Jim. Okay, I think we're getting to time here, so we might call it there unless there's any final questions that pop in. But it's been a heck of a webinar today. We've covered a whole bunch of areas, as we can see on the screen, how to add documents and link them to different objects, flag signables, the best practices, whole heap of different things. I'll leave some information on the screen about how you can get in touch with us should you have any further questions. And thank you all for attending. It's been a great session. Cheers. Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Ash. Bye-bye.